Average will not save. Hewitt average will not pay your mortgage when the job disappears. Average will not cover the medical bill that arrives without warning. Average will not fund the retirement that is approaching faster than your savings account is growing. Average will not build the life you have been promising yourself since you were 22 years old and telling yourself it was only a matter of time. Average will not do any of those things because average was never designed to. Average was designed to keep you exactly where you are, comfortable enough not to leave, uncomfortable enough to know something is wrong, never quite enough of either to force the decision. And here is the part that nobody says out loud at the motivational conference or prints on the inspirational poster. You already know this. You have known it for years. You have felt it in the gap between the life you are living and the life you know you are capable of building. You have felt it in the Sunday night dread, in the Monday morning resignation, in the quiet calculation you do at the end of every month when you look at what came in, what went out, and what is left, and you see the number that tells you the truth that your average effort is producing average results, and average results are not enough. Grant Cardone grew up with almost nothing, lost his father at 10, watched his family struggle, made every mistake a young man can make with money and ambition and direction, and came out the other side of all of it with one conviction, so absolute and so completely uncompromising, that it became the foundation of everything he built. Average is a failure strategy, not a modest strategy, not a safe strategy. A failure strategy, because in a world that is moving at the speed it is moving, standing still is not neutral. Standing still is falling behind. And falling behind, compounded over years and decades, is the slow, dignified, completely socially acceptable way of never arriving at the life you are capable of building. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is going to make you uncomfortable, and that discomfort is the beginning of everything. Curtis was 38 years old when he finally admitted it to himself. He was a regional sales manager for a mid-sized manufacturing company in Ohio. Good salary by most people's measures, a house in a decent neighborhood, 2 cars in the driveway, the external markers of a life that had worked out reasonably well for someone who had started with limited advantages and worked consistently and done most of the things that were supposed to lead to financial security. And he was broke. Not technically broke, the bills were paid mostly, but broke in the way that actually matters. Broke in the future tense. Broke in the sense that the trajectory of his financial life, projected forward 20 years, did not lead anywhere he was willing to accept. He had been in sales for 15 years. He was competent. He was reliable. He hit his numbers, not by a wide margin and by enough. He did what was required and a little more, which had always seemed like a reasonable approach, which had always felt like the smart balance between ambition and sustainability. And he had a meeting one Tuesday morning with his company's top salesperson, a man named David who had been in the same industry for the same number of years, started with fewer advantages, and was earning 3 times what Curtis earned. Not because David was 3 times smarter, not because David had 3 times the talent, because David had decided at some point in his career that average was not the goal, that hitting the number was not the ceiling, that the standard that everyone else was using to define acceptable performance was the floor, not the target. Curtis asked him, "What is the difference between you and everyone else on this team?" And David said something that Curtis told me later had been sitting in his chest like a hot coal ever since. He said, "Everyone else is trying to hit the number. I am trying to make the number irrelevant." Curtis drove home that night and sat in his driveway for 45 minutes. He was not thinking about tactics or strategies or the specific actions that would change his results. He was sitting with the realization that he had spent 15 years trying to hit a number that someone else set, and that every year he hit it, he had called it success. And every year he called it success, the life he actually wanted had moved incrementally further away. He had been playing a game with a ceiling, and he had called the ceiling a goal. Let me be honest with you about what average actually costs, not the motivational version, not the version where we talk about settling and playing small and living below your potential and comfortable abstractions that sound urgent and feel abstract. The actual specific financial, personal, experiential cost of choosing average as your operating standard. The average American saves less than 5% of their income. The average American retires with less than $200,000 in savings, which at standard withdrawal rates provides approximately $800 a month. $800 a month at 65, after 40 years of work, is the financial result of average. That is not a projection. That is the current reality of the average retirement in the most prosperous nation in human history. The average person spends 4 to 5 hours a day consuming passive entertainment. 4 to 5 hours every day, in a life where they simultaneously believe they do not have enough time to build the business, develop the skill, make the calls, do the work that would change their financial trajectory. The time exists. It is being spent. Just not on the thing that matters. The average person has a plan. The plan is that something will change. The raise will come. The opportunity will appear. The right moment will arrive when the circumstances align in a configuration that finally makes the ambitious version of the life possible. And the years go by. And the right moment does not come because the right moment is not found. The right moment is built. And building it requires a level of effort that the average operating standard does not produce. Grant Cardone grew up in this territory, not theoretically, personally. His father died when he was 10. His family went from comfortable to struggling in the specific, humiliating, grinding way that financial instability produces when it arrives without warning in a household that was not prepared for it. He watched his mother do everything she could with the resources available to her. And he absorbed at an age when children absorb everything. The specific lesson that financial vulnerability teaches, not enough is a terrifying place to live. And average, the operating standard that most people inherit from the culture around them, without ever consciously choosing it, is the systematic production of not enough. Cardone was 25 when he hit the bottom, not the bottom in the motivational speaker sense, not the dramatic crisis that makes for a clean narrative arc. The bottom in the actual sense, broke, addicted to drugs, no direction, no discipline, in debt, with a mind that was, by his own account, running a program of self-destruction so consistently and so efficiently that the only reason it did not fully succeed was that it eventually ran out of resources to consume. He went to a rehabilitation program. He got clean. And in the clarity that arrives when the substances are gone and the noise goes quiet and you are left with nothing but the unmediated reality of the life you are living and the life you could be living, he made a decision. Not the decision to try harder. Not the decision to be more disciplined or more consistent or to set better goals. The decision to reject the entire framework within which he had been operating. The decision that average, the standard he had absorbed from the environment around him, without ever examining it, was not his standard, was never going to be his standard, and that the gap between where he was and where he was capable of going was not a gap of talent or intelligence or opportunity. It was a gap of target. He had been aiming at the wrong thing. He had been measuring himself against a standard that was designed not to produce extraordinary results but to produce acceptable ones. And acceptable and extraordinary are not different points on the same spectrum. They are different games with different rules and different outcomes and entirely different requirements of the person who chooses to play them. He went into sales. He studied obsessively. He called when everyone else stopped calling. He followed up when everyone else had moved on. He treated every number his industry considered excellent as a baseline, rather than a ceiling. And he built over years of the kind of effort that most people observe from a distance and call luck a real estate portfolio, and a sales training business and a personal brand that reached millions of people around the world, not because he was exceptional at the start, because he decided that the target everyone else was using was not his target. The turning point was the decision to play a different game. The first lesson, 10x is not a bigger version of the same approach. It is a different approach. Cardone's most famous framework is the 10x rule, and the most common misunderstanding of it is that it means doing 10 times more of what you are already doing, working 10 times harder, making 10 times more calls, Putting in 10 times the hours, that is not what it means. It means setting goals that are 10 times larger than what you currently think is reasonable. And the reason this matters is not the goal itself. It is what the goal does to your approach. When your goal is to make 10 sales this month, you plan, prepare, and execute like someone who is trying to make 10 sales. When your goal is to make 100, you plan, prepare, and execute like someone who is trying to make 100. The strategies are different. The calls you make are different. The hours you keep are different. The resources you deploy are different. The people you contact are different. The entire operating framework of the person trying to make 100 is different from the framework of the person trying to make 10, and the person trying to make 100, who ends up making 40, has outperformed the person whose ceiling was 10. Curtis went back to his office after the conversation with David and doubled his call volume, not because he had more time, because he restructured his day around the premise that the standard he had been using was the floor, not the ceiling. His income increased by 60% in the following 18 months. Not because he worked 60% harder, because he aimed at a different target. The second lesson: comfort is the enemy wearing the costume of safety. Grant Cardone says this repeatedly, and it lands differently each time. Not because the words are different, but because the person hearing them is different each time, at different stages of their stagnation, at different distances from the moment when they will finally stop mistaking comfort for progress. Comfort is not safety. Comfort is the feeling that things are manageable right now, in the present moment, at the expense of the future. Comfort is the feeling you have when you stop pushing before you reach your actual limit, when you accept the number that is good enough rather than pursuing the number that is genuinely possible, when you fill the evening with entertainment rather than with the work that would change the trajectory. Safety, actual durable, lasting safety, comes from capability, from the developed skills, the built relationships, the created assets, the established reputation that make you genuinely valuable in the marketplace. Comfort and safety move in opposite directions. The more comfortable you are in the short term, the less safe you become in the long term. And the more uncomfortable you are willing to be in the short term, the more you are willing to push through the resistance, make the call, do the work, face the rejection, the safer your future becomes. Cardone lost everything in 2008 during the financial crisis. His real estate portfolio was devastated. His income collapsed. And he had a choice that every person with something to protect eventually faces: contract, protect what remains, wait for conditions to improve, or expand, go harder, invest more aggressively, make more calls, build faster than the crisis was destroying. He expanded. Most people thought he was insane. He emerged from 2008 with more than he had before it started, not because he was reckless, because he understood that the only real safety was on the other side of the discomfort, not on the near side of it. The third lesson: your income is a direct reflection of the value you produce. Produce more value. This is the lesson that makes people angry when they first hear it, because it lands as a judgment, as a statement that if you are not earning what you want to earn, you are not valuable enough. And that feels cruel. That feels like it ignores the structural realities of inequality and circumstance and the advantages that some people have that others do not. And Cardone, to be fair to the full complexity of his argument, is not saying the playing field is level. He is saying that within whatever field you are playing on, the variable most directly within your control is the value you produce. And the value you produce is a function of the skills you develop, the problems you solve, the service you provide, and the effort you bring to solving them. Curtis had been selling at a level that produced a certain income for 15 years. The income was not a judgment on his worth as a human being. It was a reflection of the value he was producing in the marketplace at that level of effort. When he produced more value, more calls, more relationships, more solutions, more genuine service to the people he was selling to, the income reflected that too. You are not paid for your time. You are paid for the value produced in your time, and the amount of value you can produce in a given hour is not fixed. It is a variable. And the most important thing you can do with the time you have, starting today, not someday, is find every way to increase the value produced per hour of your effort. The fourth lesson: obscurity is a bigger problem than failure. Cardone says, The number one problem for most people and most businesses is not failure. It is obscurity. Nobody knows what you can do. Nobody knows what you offer. Nobody knows you exist in the capacity in which you are most capable of serving them. And the reason they do not know is not that your work is not good. In many cases, the work is exceptional. The reason they do not know is that you have been operating at a level of visibility that matches your comfort zone rather than a level of visibility that matches your ambition. Average people do average amounts of promotion. They send one email when they should send 10. They make one follow-up call when they should make 5. They publish one piece of content when they should publish 20. They attend one networking event when they should be at every relevant gathering in their industry every month. This is not about being pushy. This is about being present, about occupying the space in your market, in your industry, in your professional community, at a level that corresponds to the genuine value you have to offer, rather than the level that feels comfortable and avoids the risk of seeming like too much. Cardone built his brand by doing more than everyone else was comfortable doing. More content, more outreach, more presence, more follow-up, more visibility. And the audience did not come despite the volume. The audience came because of it. I want to tell you about a conversation that Cardone has described in interviews. A conversation with his mother after his father died, when the financial reality of the family had changed irreversibly and suddenly, and without warning. He was 10 years old, and he watched his mother, a woman of genuine capability and intelligence and strength, navigate the specific, grinding humiliation of not having enough, of watching the life that had been built creak under the strain of a loss she did not plan for and was not equipped to absorb. He made a decision in that child's mind, not a sophisticated decision, not a strategic plan with measurable outcomes. The raw, unformed, viscerally real decision of a child who has seen what not enough looks like from the inside and has decided, with the specific ferocity of someone who has been genuinely afraid, that he will not live there. That decision was not enough on its own. He spent years working against it: addiction, debt, directionlessness. The gap between the decision and the discipline to execute it was real and costly and painful in ways that his public story sometimes glosses over. But the decision survived. And when the clarity came, when the noise went quiet and he could finally hear it again, it was still there, unchanged. The 10-year-old standing in the house where not enough lived and saying never, never this, whatever it takes, whatever the cost, whatever the discomfort, whatever the effort, not this. I want to ask you, and I want you to actually sit with this question rather than simply moving past it. What is the version of not enough that you have seen, not in the abstract, in your actual life, in your family, in your childhood, in the specific personal experience of watching financial vulnerability do what financial vulnerability does to a person, to a family, to a life? Because I believe that inside every person who is living at average is a version of that 10-year-old, a version that knows, with complete clarity and zero ambiguity, what the stakes are, what the cost of not enough actually is, what is being protected and what is being risked by the choice to accept average as a permanent operating standard. That version of you deserves better than average. The people who depend on you deserve better than average. The life you are capable of building, the actual, specific, financially secure, genuinely free life that your best effort makes possible, deserves to exist, rather than remaining as a possibility that was never fully pursued. Here is what I am asking you to do, not the inspirational version, the specific version. This week, not next month, not after the project is finished. This week, identify one area of your professional life where you have been operating at the average standard, where you have been hitting the number rather than making the number irrelevant, and double the effort in that area. Not permanently and just for 30 days. Double the calls, double the follow-ups, double the content, double the hours allocated to the work that actually produces income rather than the work that creates the feeling of productivity. Double the target you have been using to define success in that area. Then track the results honestly, not to prove a point, to see the data, to understand with actual evidence rather than theory what a different level of effort produces in your specific situation, because the argument for average is almost always abstract, and it is the argument that feels comfortable and requires no evidence. The argument against it is almost always concrete. It is the evidence of what a different standard produces when it is actually applied. Cardone did not build what he built by reading about 10x and finding it compelling. He built it by applying it, imperfectly, inconsistently at first, with more failure and more rejection than the public story includes, but consistently enough over enough time that the compounding of the above-average effort eventually produced results that the average operating standard could not have generated in multiple lifetimes. You do not have to become Grant Cardone. You do not have to want a private jet or a 9-figure net worth or the specific, maximalist expression of success that he has built, and that is genuinely not for everyone. But you do have to decide, not someday, now, whether average is actually your standard, whether the number someone else set for what is acceptable performance in your industry is the ceiling of your ambition, whether the life you are currently building, compounded forward 20 years, is the life you are willing to accept. If the answer is no, the work starts today, not with a better plan, with a bigger target, not with a new strategy, with the decision that the standard everyone else is using is the floor. Your floor, not your ceiling. Average will not save you. You have always known this. Now stop pretending you have more time to decide. The life you are capable of building is waiting for the level of effort that makes it possible. Go produce that effort, starting now. If this reached the part of you that has been accepting average without calling it that, share it with the person you know who has been hitting the number when they should be making the number irrelevant. Subscribe for more content that does not comfort you. It challenges you. And tell me in the comments, what is the one area of your professional life where you have been operating at the average standard and you are committing today to changing?